I'm not gonna lie, she's probably the most terrifying final boss for me in the entire series. Haibara Sakuya, the unfortunate vessel who, it seems, was just wronged no matter where she went or what she did, and, in the end, turned into a sort of super ghost that could kill literally just by looking at her. This week, let's take a look at another of my all-time favorites and see what we can uncover about she who must not be looked upon. 1. Haibara Sakuya was born in 1949 or so, making her the most recent in terms of all the game's main antagonists. She was born on Nogetsu Island, a small island to the south of Japan's main island, which also makes her the only final ghost not born and raised in the Tohoku area as well. And it's on September 17th, 1979 that her ritual fails, making her around 30 at the time, and thus the oldest of all the final ghosts as well. 2. Sakuya's last name, Haibara, uses the characters for ash and field or plain. This isn't a terribly uncommon surname, and it's most prevalent in the Sanyo area of Japan, which is the Okayama, Hiroshima area. Considering that Nogetsu Island is said to be to the south of this area, that makes it somewhat fitting. 3. As for her first name, like many of the characters in this game, the first character is lunar related and means new moon, while the second character means night. This isn't an especially common combination of characters, but you can find numerous other fictional characters with this same name and kanji, so Fatal Frame's Sakuya isn't unique in that regard. It's also interesting to note that saku can also mean to bloom or blossom, a term often used in the game to refer to one of the stages of moonlight syndrome. 4. Sakuya is voiced by Tanaka Rie. Tanaka has been active since the late 1990s and has no doubt appeared in many of your favourite shows. I can't even begin to list what she's done over the years, as we'd be here all day. But of note to us Fatal Frame fans, she also voiced Kureha in the Deep Crimson Butterfly remake. And because 4 doesn't have an English dub, there is no English voice actress for Sakuya. 5. Similar to Reika in the third game, it's hard to say that Sakuya died in a traditional sense. Just like Reika went through her ritual to enter eternal sleep, a sort of state between life and death, so too Sakuya doesn't actually die. In fact, the devs often refer to her as living yet dead, or living whilst also dead. She's in that in-between state they like so much. 6. It's thought that Sakuya's moonlight syndrome was triggered by her performing in the 1969 Nogetsu Kagura. It was only after this that she began to show symptoms. And, being the daughter of the Haibara Infirmary director, she was placed in a special, much larger room there, while her father and brother tried finding a cure for her. Sakuya's room was 412, the ice or frozen moon room. In one of Yo's tapes, he tells us that he had it built for you, for your protection. 7. Sakuya was born with an incredibly strong sixth sense, and this perhaps affected the depth of her moonlight syndrome, and the explosive consequences that followed the failed rite of descent. This was perhaps further complicated by the fact that Sakuya's strong sixth sense made her incredibly susceptible to possession, and it appeared that much of her time in the Haibara Infirmary was spent, well, possessed by the spirits of people, particularly children, who had died there. In her first and second diaries in particular, Sakuya mentions the little ones inside me, and I don't want you to know the pain of those who have the souls enter into them. 8. On that note, one of the key points of Sakuya is, in essence, her loss of self, and her fears related to that. One of the points of moonlight syndrome is that the worse it gets, the more the patient loses sense of who they are. Their memories disappear, and they become a sort of empty shell. Numerous notes and files in the game point out how afraid Sakuya was of that. In a call to Misaki, she says, "Don't forget about me, even if I forget myself." In one of her diaries, she writes, "When was the last time I heard it? The gentle sound of my own song." This is, of course, exacerbated by her continually being possessed by the spirits of others as well. 9. And on that note, this is one of the reasons Sakuya turns to dolls for comfort. In her first diary entry, she tells us, "I put myself in the doll, so that even if I forget myself, the me in the doll will tell me who I am." This is also how the creation of Mia comes about, a doll Sakuya gave to Misaki that combines characters from both of their names and represents the both of them at the same time. 10. In 1967, Sakuya gave birth to a daughter, Ayako. She would have been around 18 at this time, and although the game never outright states who the father is, there is little doubt from all the heavy-handed hints that Ayako's father is none other than Yo, Sakuya's younger brother. Yeah, she beat Miku to it. 11. It's Shigeto and Yo's attempts to save Sakuya that lead to the destruction of their entire island, as they come across the rite of descent during their research and figure that if they can recreate this long-lost ritual, then it can cure Sakuya of her moonlight syndrome. But because they're working with imperfect information, instead the ritual fails and Sakuya blossoms. While she doesn't outright die, she's left in a state between life and death and becomes, in a way, a ticking time bomb. 12. It's not until 2 years later that the bomb goes off and Sakuya wakes from her coma. This event becomes known as the second Day of Tranquility, taking place on September 17th, 1981. This puts it just 5 years before the events of the first game, by the way. At any rate, Sakuya finally awakens and walks around the island, resonating and causing everyone who looks at her to blossom as well. The only person to survive Sakuya's trail of destruction is her daughter, Ayako, who hides in a hidden part of her room in the hospital. 13. One of the patients at the Haibara infirmary actually predicted, or perhaps had a prophetic vision, of Sakuya's awakening. Magaki Yuko, an artist, mentions in his notes that the visions continue to bring me more and more masterpieces, and amongst his paintings we can find several of Sakuya blooming and walking around like she did on the Day of Tranquility. Unfortunately for him, Magaki's visions weren't able to save him, and he also fell victim to her that day. 14. It is Sakuya, through Mia, that doll she and Misaki shared when Misaki was just a child, who summons Misaki back to Dogetsu Island shortly before the events of the game. When Marie and Tomoe die in a failed recreation of the Kagura shortly before the events of the game, Misaki then starts having visions of Mia as a human, although Misaki isn't quite sure who she is, just that she seems familiar. 15. Unlike most other final bosses in the series, you can battle Sakuya before the end fight. Naturally, she isn't as difficult to beat during these fights as the final one, but this does make her a rarity in the series, where most encounters with the final boss before the end of the game generally require you to simply run or die. 16. Sakuya is also a rarity in the series in that she's technically defeated by 3 playable characters at different times. Misaki in Phase 8, Choshiro in Phase 10, and then Luka defeats her in the Cape Tsukiyomi Lighthouse at the end of the game. 17. Originally, the devs were going to have Yo put the mask on Sakuya at the end of the game, as that felt like the most fitting ending from her perspective. But it didn't make much sense for Luka, the main playable character of the game. And so in the end they switched it to Choshiro, the detective who found Luca as a child, and has much closer ties to her and her mother instead. 18. Much like other main antagonists in the Fatal Frame series, you can technically find Sakuya in two forms throughout the game: evil and even more evil. Her first form, known as Shadow, is generally how you see her throughout the majority of the game, and here she's surrounded by something like a black miasma, and her red clothes appear to be black as well. Her other form, Lunar Eclipse, is how you see her in the final fight, where she's surrounded by purple instead, like a shadow Pokemon. Gotta catch 'em all, am I right? 19. In the Fatal Frame 4 official guidebook, the devs briefly talk about what might happen if a third Kagura was performed, and Sakuya bloomed even worse than her current state. They mention that while the Day of Tranquility pretty much wiped out Dogetsu Island, if this were to happen again, Sakuya's resonance would take over not just Dogetsu, but the neighbouring islands as well. Sakuya would, in essence, become a ghostly nuclear zone, destroying any and all in the vicinity, with that area growing larger with each failed ritual. And all of this because they couldn't cut Sakuya's face off to prevent her from blooming, because, technically, she wasn't actually dead. 20. Finally, Sakuya is thus far the only main antagonist whose ritual didn't fail because of the loss of someone close to her. In Fatal Frame 1, Kirie lost her lover. In 2, Sae lost her sister, Yae. In 3, Reika lost Kaname. And in 5, Ose lost Dr. Aso, and all of the shrine maidens close to her as they were killed while she was being put in a casket. Sakuya simply took part in a Kagura, contracted a local disease, and then had that illness worsened by her family's well-meaning yet incredibly poor attempts at helping her. And that is 20 facts about Haibara Sakuya, the main antagonist from Fatal Frame 4. But what did you guys think of this one? Are there any other characters or games you'd like me to explore? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you again next time.